why it's day now is I continued recording. I paused and took a break. It, just needed to take a breather, sort of thing, and continued recording. Like 5 minutes later, and did not realize that my phone battery was basically almost dead. So I recorded the whole thing talking about today's song, and yeah, it was no good. So this is take two. So this morning I'm drinking a Southern Tier Brewing Irish Cream Stout. My friend handed this off to me over this past weekend, and I've never tried it before. Let's see. It smells kind of caramelly, some vanilla hints, so let's take a swig. Not bad. Yeah, definitely a cream stout. Not entirely sure how it's what makes it Irish. Maybe some sort of Irish whiskey. That would be my guess. Like aged in Irish whiskey barrels or something. I don't know, but not bad at all. I dig it. So, anyways, today we're going to talk about chapter 49, which is entitled Witching Hour. So, Witching Hour was actually the first song that I wrote for this EP. I started it basically right after I released Volume 5. Like within, I don't know, like 3 days or something like that, picked up guitar and just started doodling around, sort of thing. What I wanted to do was something kind of similar to how I wrote the song "The Revolution Is Televised" from Volume 5, which if you didn't remember, what I did for that song was, I was tracking guitars one night, finished, ahead of time, I guess, and just put on a bunch of crazy effects and just started messing around and was like, holy crap, this is cool. Hit record and compiled it, made the basis for the song on these like really weird ambient guitar tracks that are in the background of that song. And I used that simply as a template to program the drums. So really, it was the drums that really set the tone for the song. I mean, it was, yeah, I'm a guitar player, so I'm always going to have some sort of guitar part that I'm writing off of, but usually I have, clear riffs, for like the rhythm tracks that I've already laid down and make the drums kind of fit to that. And this was the opposite. And I wanted to do the same thing for Witching Hour. But at the same time, not, completely recycle the exact same thing. Like, I wanted different guitar tones, different just feel to it, I guess. So I started out with, this higher kind of tonality, fairly clean, bright sounding, just a lot of reverb on it, sort of guitar part, wrote that, and used that kind of as a scratch track. It was fairly set in stone, but went, did the drums, let the drums really set the groove for it, um, and then quantized the scratch track to fit with the drums. Re-recorded that, bright guitar part, and then to make it a little trippy, did something fairly similar to like the guitar parts in Revolution is televised, sort of in the background, um, behind the bright reverby guitar part, which listening to the recording, it really kind of sounds more like I'm playing a keyboard in some parts, but no, it's straight guitar with like a bunch of delays and reverse delays, and I don't know, maybe I put some phase on it. I honestly, I have it written down, but I don't remember offhand. Um, but yeah, it was just having this like simple progression, write the drums, then re-record those guitar parts, and then slap some bass in with it. Um, so yeah, it was about letting the drums really breathe and set the tone for everything else. And then doing the like left and right guitars, like as the very last thing. Um, and that's basically how the demo version, um, like bonus track of the like skeleton and muscle mix came about. That it was just like the drums, those two kind of ambient guitar parts, and then the bass, um, which I had within like a week and a half, 2 weeks from actually starting it. And I put it on my phone, took it to my buddy Dan, let him listen to it, and him hearing that like initial demo version of it, he was like, dude, this is cool. Uh, Consider basically keeping it an instrumental track. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do any, vocals or anything like that to it at first, but over time, as the song developed even further with the guitar parts, it just seemed right to keep it as an instrumental. Because, like, honestly, I considered doing an entire, like, instrumental album, but, the problem with that is, you know, the story itself becomes too interpretive to the listener. Um, that an entire volume 6 of even just 4 instrumentals, it would just okay. Volume 5 ends. Volume 6 is choose your own adventure, and then whatever comes next, Volume 7 would just it would be a huge jump. Um, and so I kind of made a compromise with myself, if you will, of okay, I'll do 4 songs, 2 will be instrumental, 2 will be with vocals, and thus carry the story. So I decided Witching Hour would be one of those instrumental tracks. So that's pretty much how it came about. So let's talk about the song meaning now. With it being an instrumental track, it is more of a choose your own adventure. My buddy Michael is like a professor and like concert cellist. I, Dude is amazing, just playing classical music. Um, and talking music with him over the years, I remember one time him, maybe he was talking about, I think it was a Russian cellist, um, Russian, maybe he was a conductor too. I mean, he wrote his own stuff, basically. But this Russian guy named Rostakovich, something like that. Um, which I've listened to it some through my buddy Michael, but I think it was Rostakovich that he was talking about, that there was a symphony that he wrote, or maybe it was somebody else. Anyway, the idea was that this entire symphonic piece, however many movements it had, whether it was 3, 4, more, um, was a story to itself of like the music was telling a story of a person who's floating down a river or a stream, um, you know, through a forest and through some rapids, through a town, sort of thing. And that's kind of what I wanted this song to be initially. It was, yes, it's kind of choose your own adventure, like the details of it, whatever you want to come up with it is fine. But, at the same time, it's not instrumental or taken to the furthest degree of it being like some sort of post-structural sort of narrative where, it is, I guess a post-structural sort of narrative would be like me as the author, the creator of this piece of music. My interpretation of it doesn't matter whatsoever under the guise of, post-structural theories. That literally the viewer, the listener, is the person who has the ultimate meaning for the song. And I have a problem with that sort of post-structural aesthetic, I guess, because somebody could say that based on the ending of the last song, they just mysteriously teleport to the scene of a horror movie, or that it's some sort of rape scene, or something very obscene. And it isn't that. That wasn't in mind whatsoever. So I reject post-structuralism, and so therefore, like, my interpretation, if you will, isn't completely set in stone, and I don't want it to be in this case anyway, because it is a choose your own adventure sort of storytelling, with it being an instrumental. But at the same time, there is a structure to it based on the ending of the previous song and the beginning of the next song. They're kind of bookends for this particular song, and give a context clues that sort of at least keep you within a frame of reference and environment and whatnot. So really the interpretation personally for me of Witching Hour is that the Black Knight and the protagonist, at the end of the last song, they're, in the wilderness, they hear some like weird noises of like voices off in the distance. And so in this song, they pretty much out of curiosity start exploring their environment, and it's very late at night. And the tone is, that there is danger in the air, but it isn't that they feel unsafe. They just recognize that, you know, there's an air of mystery and, danger lurking around, but for the most part, they're safe. They don't have any direct reason to think that anything's wrong. Um, they do come across some shadowy form of what is an animal, um, like in a field. Um, and they're a little apprehensive about that. Maybe they even end up having to fight the animal, not like even up close to it, they can't tell exactly what it is, whether it's like a deer or a dog or a wolf or whatever. But, they fight it off, and animal runs off. They're fine, they're not hurt or anything, and they continue exploring the environment with everything that's around them in this nature environment. And so at the end of the song, they come across a cave. Um, and we'll talk more about the cave tomorrow in like the next song. Um, so now on to, I guess, the personal meaning, for me, like what it means in real life and not just like the narrative of the storytelling that I'm conveying. So personally, it doesn't really have any particular meaning or like particular story from like my personal life that locks it in stone. It's an instrumental. It is supposed to have certain tone to it, a certain groove or whatever. It's just me having fun playing music, and writing something. Um, Writing something that's haunting and beautiful, at the same time, mysterious, etc., etc. Some heavy parts, but overall not too much as compared to other songs I've written, and that is deliberately to like mirror the fact that it's not an overtly and overly aggressive song. So the title "Witching Hour," like the okay, so the demo versions, Skeleton and Muscles, as I guess I've already sort of stated. It had nothing to like the demo title Skeleton and Muscles had nothing to do with the title of the song. It had I initially, it was like the working title was Skeleton and Muscles because I, with it being just drums, bass, and these ambient guitars, it was like, okay, this is like the structure of the song. This is what gives it a backbone, makes it solid. Having these drums and having this like context to work off of. That's what gives it its strength and its muscle tone. And so, it was like anything that I write after that, guitar wise, or anything else, would just be building on that like foundation. So that, that's why I called it, Skeleton and Muscles initially, just, not like some sort of religious meaning or narrative meaning. It was just a practical one. But Witching Hour as a title has more to do with the like time of night that this song's taking place, with it being, after midnight to 2, 3 a.m., just dead of night sort of thing. Um, so yeah, it has more to do with the exact time within the story, but I also admit that it has an implication of metaphysical sort of elements to it. So, it's not about that per se, but so witching hour, you know, in Satanism and forms of, I guess, what, for the lack of a better term, pagan witchcraft, whatever, refers to rituals, magic, whatever that happens. Well, I guess technically it happens before midnight. Like the actual rituals will happen, 10 to 12 sort of thing. But after that, the idea of the spirits, demons, the whatever, go out and do the work from midnight to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. sort of thing. Which I'll talk about that slightly more in a couple of minutes, but it's not necessarily about that, but at the same time, the implication of it, I guess I have to give an anecdote or an example of sort of what this song sort of invokes for me when it comes to feeling. So, gosh, it's been more than 7 years. Basically, one night I was hanging out with a couple of my friends, and in the process, found out some news concerning, the woman I wanted to marry. That, I basically found out that she had gotten back together with an ex-boyfriend, sort of thing, and I was just down in the dumps. So I wanted to just sort of drive around, kind of aimlessly, sort of thing. My two friends, they were a married couple. The wife, she wanted to just kind of stay at home, and then the husband, he was down with just like driving around listening to music with me or whatever. So we started driving around, and I had this idea to go to this pond or lake, not too far from right here, a couple of miles away at this like state park. And over the last 15 or so years, I've gone to this lake late at night, literally like a handful of times. It's kind of like this secret place or spot or whatever, even though it's not a secret, but just it being late at night, and every time I've gone to this place, it's in the context of having some sort of like romantic crisis, find out bad news concerning, someone that I'm in love with or whatever, and being stressed out over that, or depressed or whatever. So handful of times I've gone to this place, and I've always gone by myself, really late at night. So I had the idea of going to this place again, but taking my buddy with me. And so we hiked down this, gravel road to the lake, wound around it to where there's a dock out on the lake, and between the dock on the lake and there's a hill that goes up from the dock, and there's like a I don't know, picnic sort of shelter sort of thing at the top of this hill, and behind the shelter is a thick forest tree line. And than like the gravel roads between the dock and uh, this shelter area. And I used to go to this like shelter area in this pond when I was a kid, with like basically summer camps. Um, when I was real young, we used to go there. Um, so anyway, my buddy and I, we're sitting out on the dock. It's late. We're just talking things through, uh, talking about the girl and everything. And I swear, like, this song's nothing to do with her, but just explaining why we were out there in the middle of the night to begin with. But point being, after a while of sitting there, my buddy was like in mid sentence when he just stopped and was like staring out, kind of out towards where we had come from, which we had to hike down to this area, maybe a quarter mile, if that. And him looking back, he pointed out something. So what I gathered even before that, but especially after that night, my buddy, like, terms of when it comes to like paranormal sort of stuff, like, he was definitely a believer and had supposedly done work in, I guess, paranormal studies, or like it was more than just a hobby at one time, I guess. Like, he claimed that he, got paid for some of his research. That it was kind of like a part-time job or something at one time. And because of it, he had come across some pretty crazy stuff that he ended up telling me about later that night, but that's neither here nor there. But point being that, like, he was a believer in a lot of weird stuff, and it's not that I didn't believe by any stretch of the imagination, but I was definitely more skeptical. So he was more like Fox Mulder from the X-Files, while I was more like Agent Dana Scully, in our kind of dynamic when it comes to that sort of stuff. But he was sitting there and he saw this like really dim orb or figure, and I started looking in the direction. It was, gosh, it was far away, a couple of 100 yards maybe. There wasn't really light out that night. Like, it was pretty overcast and cloudy, if I remember right. I do remember there wasn't like a ton of moonlight or anything like that. But I kept seeing this like dull orb just off in the distance, and I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me, if it was that I was looking at this one area for so long, but I could swear that like I saw it moving, but it wasn't like a normal moving. It was shifting phases. Like, you could see like something you would see in like a photo, or some sort of manipulated movie or something, where things are slowed down or something, and you can see like the object and it moving, but like it being in phases, and then it would just snap back to where it was at or whatever. I mean, it was crazy looking, but it was I couldn't tell what it was. It was really far off, and I didn't know if my brain was playing tricks on me, but I saw it too. We both saw it. And I knew that there was like some sort of a fishing sign or something out in the water towards where it was at. But later on, with that in mind, I was wondering, well, maybe there's some sort of ambient light source that's reflecting off this sign, like metal sign in the middle of the water. But once we got to once we left there and we were passing the sign, which was kind of way out in the middle of the lake, back, you know, towards where my car was parked, I looked back and sort of like to see like the angle of um, where the dock was, because you could barely see the like silhouette or whatever of the dock from there, and it was clear to me like the angle was completely off. So it seemed reasonable to me that like what we were seeing was actually like somewhere on the road. But as we saw this thing still like moving in phases and stuff like that, and it wasn't moving closer, it wasn't moving further, it was just kind of like side to side, sort of moving and staying the same distance away from us. But as this was happening, within a couple of minutes, up the hill from the dock directly in front of us, we saw an animal just appear. Didn't know what it was. Um, I remember it seemed like its fur was a little shaggy. Definitely too shaggy to be like a deer. But it was like maybe the size of a very large buck. But it wasn't shaped like a buck. It was more like, I don't know, a wolf or something. But like, I don't know if like wolves get that big. Um, and it was just sort of pacing around, and it was this, since there was so little light, but like enough light that you could see that there was something there, obviously. Um, all we could see was that it was just this pale gray color. And like me and my buddy both noticed this thing at the same time, and we were both like, oh shit, if this thing charges at us. Like both of us threw all our stuff out onto the dock, like from our pockets, like our wallets, phones, keys, stuff like that, because we were both thinking like, if this thing starts charging down towards us, we're both just diving into the lake. I knew that there was like, I don't know, 30 yards out or whatever, in the middle of the lake was like a little buoy island sort of thing that you could get on, and that we would be safe there if we had to swim there. And anyway, it didn't come to that. We just saw this thing kind of pacing around. It stopped and was like staring at us with its like head turned, and we saw it from the side. And then it walked up further up the hill, and there, disappeared for a while, like behind the what you call it, like the shelter area. Like it walked back behind it and sort of into the woods, and then like ended up reappearing, minute or two later, walked kind of back onto the other side, and disappeared again into the trees. I don't know, we waited maybe another 5-10 more minutes, and we were both like, we need to get the hell out of here. Grabbed all our stuff, stuffed our pockets again, and walked back to my car and left. Got in my car, pulled out, and we both looked at the clock, and it was like 12:45 or so. And my buddy turned to me and was like, dude, by my estimate, since neither one of us were like paying attention to the time or anything like that, um, you know, my buddy said his estimate was that it had been 45 minutes ago and that all of this had started around the strike of midnight. And so, like, him saying, like, dude, this is like the witching hour sort of shit. And we drove from there about a mile up the road. I wanted to take him to this field that's down this dirt road that I used to bicycle down as a kid when I was uh, visiting like with my grandparents. And at the end of this road, and I had some like friends in high school that lived down there, but it would dead end, and then there was this field, and if you walked past the field about 100 yards, you would find this huge, massive. I don't know what it was. It was just this old building that I went into like in while I was in college doing like a photo shoot for a black and white photography uh, class assignment while I was like home for spring break. And I walked in there, I think I took a couple of pictures. There was like 1960s like washing machine, or like not washing machines, but I don't know, just appliances, refrigerators, stuff like that. Like people discarded. It was dirt floor, and I just wonder if it was like some sort of slaughterhouse or something back years and years ago. But I have no idea what the place was. There was a couple of like tobacco, I don't know, cabins or something back there too. So I took my buddy back there just to show him, but like when we got there, it'd been years since I'd, walked through the place, and all that stuff was torn down. It was just a barren field, and it had been like recently tilled, like somebody was gonna, plant tobacco or something on it. And we just sort of like stood in this empty field, heard some like dogs or some sort of animal howling off in the distance. And my buddy just kind of turned to me and was like, dude, we need to get the hell out of here. And I'm like, I don't, like, everything's fine. Like, are you afraid, like, a wolf or something's going to come out from the trees 100 yards away and charge at us? And he was like, not necessarily that, but he just had the sense that something really bad had happened there, and that like some sort of spiritual juju or something was just left over, and he was kind of uneasy being there. So we turned around, got back in my car, drove off, and he ended up telling me a lot of crazy stories that he had experienced. So I say all this as an anecdote that this song isn't about that particular incident, that particular night, but it's that feeling of like being at unease, of being somewhere where like you're kind of exploring, like you're out in nature, but since it's so late at night and nocturnal animals coming out and stuff like that, like there is a certain amount of, I guess, naturalism to that, but at the same time something like very spooky at the same time. Maybe it's something that's primal to our being, or maybe there is something, paranormal, metaphysical that is going on out there. So that's the feeling that I wanted this song to convey. And so, like, further with that, into like the more metaphysical, paranormal kind of stuff. 3 days before I released the album, so it was like on a Tuesday, Wednesday, like 2 weeks ago. A buddy of mine that I know from my gym, you know, he works. We used to work out together at like the same time. He's older guy, like in his mid to late 50s now, but like we would lift weights together and stuff like that. And he he and his wife work out at a later time now, like since the pandemic sort of thing. Um, so I rarely see them these days, but I ran into him one day, and I hadn't seen him in at least 6 months. So, we were standing there catching up and everything. They're cool people. And he was like, "Oh, did you hear so and so, blah, blah, blah? Check it out. I'm going to send you this video later." And I was like, "Okay, cool." He's like, "It's kind of long, but you'll find it interesting." So, anyway, to make a long story short, he sent me this, like, it was close to 3 hour video of this guy that, this Christian minister that it dealt with his like spiritual battles with like the highest levels of Satanism, like, period. Telling his story, and stuff it gets deep and it's out there, but it's like, I think like the skeptic in me, wants to, I mean, obviously question it, but it's that feeling that, what if it is true? Like, what if this guy isn't just a crock, that like this stuff is real? Astral projections, um, and I'm talking about like these satanic rituals. Like, it was. I'm mentioning this stuff because this guy in this video kept referring to the witching hour during these like satanic rituals, and so I'm like, this is kind of weird, like my buddy sending me this video just out of the blue like that, and me releasing this song. Like, I was basically finishing up, all dotting the I's and crossing the T's, to get this music out like 3 days later. And he sends me that. It's like, I can't take that as just mere coincidence. So like, this song has further meaning to me because of that. And so when I released, this album a couple of weeks ago, and, listening to it over again and all after the release, listening to this song in particular, I realized, I guess, well, definitely, like, my prayer to God for, this song is that I want this song to make people feel uneasy, but not like the typical everyday person. I'm talking like, I want this song to be like this may sound really weird, really strange, but I don't care. Like, I want it to be like a form, a soundtrack of spiritual warfare, um, but not against human beings. Like, okay, I've got a friend who prays to Odin and stuff like that. I'm not. I don't want this song to, like offend her or anything like that, because she's my friend. Like, she's pretty damn cool. What I'm talking about instead is people who are overtaken by evil. That's who I want to be uneasy, when listening to this song. But like the evil itself, the spirits, the demons, whatever it is you want to call it, that's behind all that stuff, that's what I want to war against. Not war against flesh and blood, but principalities of darkness and all that sort of stuff. Like true, like metaphysical evil. That's what I want this song to be against. But if you've got like some sort of Hitler figure that wants to kill off like millions of people, or Chairman Mao, who like, what is it, 40 million of his own people, that sort of thing, like that, it's pretty damn evil in my book. And I think that like degree of evil is extremely rare, but that's what should feel. Those are the people and the evil that should truly feel at dis-ease when hearing this song. So basically, I want this to be a song that counteracts the forces of darkness. Simple as that. And so that's witching hour for you. And I'll finish this beer, and tomorrow we'll hopefully finish this thing up with the next two songs. So cheers for now.